You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. I've got to start with probably the craziest end to the Aaron Rodgers situation possible. I don't think anyone saw this coming. I thought he was going to be traded. After turning down that extension, $90 million over 2 years, I didn't think there was any way possible that the Packers would be able to mend fences. And I didn't blame Rodgers for that. I understood where he was coming from. He has been disrespected in Green Bay for a long time, not giving him big offensive playmakers, not keeping around guys who he liked, the Jordan Love pick, kicking that field goal. Yeah, he's been disrespected for a long time. He was sick of it. I didn't think there was any way that cooler heads would prevail. Well, I was wrong. Rodgers is going to report to training camp. And the way that the Packers convinced him to attend training camp is nothing short of bizarre. Rodgers was signed through the 2023 season. Now that season has been voided on Rodgers' contract. After this coming season, Rodgers and the Packers will revisit where they're at. So Rodgers can either decide whether he wants to sign an extension or try to force his way out of Green Bay again. I gotta say this. I'm very surprised that Rodgers agreed to this. If Rodgers doesn't trust the Packers, what makes him think that the Packers are going to do anything but keep him around for the 2022 season? Unless you get it in writing in this new contract, what's to stop the Packers from saying, yeah, we've revisited it, our stance hasn't changed, we want to keep you around? Also, this kicking the can down the road doesn't work for me. If you're the Packers, you're going to have this same situation in 6 months. So nothing changed. I'll say this. If after this coming season, Rodgers still wants out, and the Packers relent and say, okay, we'll trade you, you'll have more teams vying for his services, including teams that we don't see coming. At this very moment, the only team that really made sense for Rodgers was the Denver Broncos. Now, while that would make Broncos fans very happy, it wouldn't make Packers fans very happy. You know why? Because if you're only negotiating with one team, if it's a bidding war of one, you're not going to get fair value. Think about it this way. You're in an auction. You see an item that you like. No one else wants it. All you have to do is put down the minimum bid, and that's it. If someone else comes along and says, yeah, that looks nice, I want that, the price goes up and up and up. If in 6 months, it's clear that Rodgers is going to be traded, we'll have some other interested teams. If Tua busts, the Dolphins will be interested. Maybe the Steelers, depending on what happens with Roethlisberger. The Colts, maybe, depending on what happens with Carson Wentz. The Giants will be more interested if Daniel Jones busts. The Eagles will be interested if Jalen Hurts busts. Maybe the Saints would be interested if this 2-quarterback approach crashes and burns. The Panthers, if they realize that Sam Darnold isn't the answer. Maybe you could do a super trade with the Seahawks if Russell Wilson decides that he's really unhappy. We heard rumors of that early in the offseason. You've got options if you're the Packers. But I'll say this. Get hip to the idea of trading Rodgers. This is Rodgers saying, look, I'll give it one more go. This is my last dance. We've heard that metaphor used a lot. I'm going to give it all I got. I'm going to do my damnedest to win another Super Bowl here. If I don't, though, if it's another disappointing playoff exit, yeah, I'm going to want out. Now, I'll say this. One thing that's really ticked me off throughout this whole process is hearing what some Packers fans are saying about Aaron Rodgers. They're saying, good riddance, we don't want ya, you can't win a big game. Make no mistake about it, there's a sizable percentage of Packers fans that's okay with moving on from Aaron Rodgers. Those people are nuts. This guy's the reigning MVP. This guy's a first ballot Hall of Famer. This guy's one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, and you're just ready to move on from him? Look, the notion that he doesn't play well in big games, that's a little unfair. This guy did win Super Bowl MVP. The thing is, though, and admittedly, I didn't realize this, Rodgers has been bad in NFC title games. Or maybe the better way of saying that is, he hasn't played up to his standards. Even in the Super Bowl year against the Bears, he was dreadful. Didn't throw a single touchdown pass. That was more because Caleb Haney played more for the Bears than Jay Cutler did. That wasn't a Packers win as much as it was a Bears loss. But still, Rodgers rebounded to win Super Bowl MVP, so you've got to give him a pass. And Rodgers was great against the Eagles that year in the wild card round. He was great against the Falcons in the divisional round. You got to give him a pass. If you had lost that game, okay, kill Aaron Rodgers, but it's unfair to criticize him for that game. Everything else, though, is fair game. Against the Seahawks, Rodgers didn't set the world on fire. Threw for under 200 yards, threw 2 interceptions to just 1 touchdown. Against the Falcons, the Packers were scoreless in the first half. Same thing the year after against the Niners. And even in this past NFC title game, against the Buccaneers, Rodgers really didn't turn it on until the second half. Admittedly, I didn't realize that. I knew the stories, I knew the games, I just never put it all together in my head like that. But you gotta realize something. While it's right that Rodgers doesn't play well in those games, you're not getting there without him. So you have a right to be upset that Aaron Rodgers has only made 1 Super Bowl. You have a right to be upset that his performances in NFC Championship games leave something to be desired. I mean, it's kind of interesting when you look at the total body of work in the Falcons game, the Niners game, and the Buccaneers game. It doesn't look bad, but reach back into your mind. Rodgers wasn't great all throughout those games. Like I said, bad in the first half against the Falcons. There was never a moment during the Niners game that I thought the Packers would win that game. Once that game got underway, it was clear that Rodgers just didn't have it. Give Robert Saleh's defense a ton of credit. And against the Buccaneers, bad in the first half. So you have a right to be upset about that if you're a Packers fan, but to just say good riddance to him, that's unfair. This guy won you a Super Bowl. This guy came in when Brett Favre was doing his will I retire or won't I retire nonsense. That's the thing. Like, people are bringing up the Favre to Rodgers transition as a reason why Rodgers shouldn't be doing this. It's 2 completely different things. Aaron Rodgers has never talked about retirement. The only way that he's talked about it is by saying that he feels disrespected, so maybe he'll retire and go host Jeopardy. But he never said that he was done with football, like Favre mused about. If Rodgers is going to openly talk about retirement, yeah, sure, draft a quarterback. But he didn't. He was still a great quarterback. Don't take his heir apparent. The situations are just incredibly different. Quite honestly, it's a lazy comparison. All in all, this is going to be a really interesting situation to monitor. We'll have to see what happens in 6 months. It's very possible that the Packers just blow things up. They trade Rodgers. They move on from Devontae Adams. They move on from Zadarius Smith. And they just roll with Jordan Love. Give him whatever help they can. But instead of Love taking over a playoff-ready team like Rodgers did, they may try to do a slow build. Moving on now to the Washington football team signing Jonathan Allen to a 4-year extension worth $72 million. He's also getting a $30 million signing bonus. The $72 mil over 4 years equates to $18 mil a year. And I know why Washington is doing this. Allen had a great year last year. After struggling to put it all together his first few years in the league, he really shined last year. Had an 80.3 overall grade, according to Pro Football Focus, became more of a well-rounded player as opposed to just always trying to get the sack. I said this yesterday. Sometimes you don't need to get the sack. In fact, more often than not, you don't. All you need is to just make the quarterback uncomfortable. Allen realized that. He thrived in Ron Rivera's system. And he's young, too. He's only 26. But to give him $72 million off of one great year, I'm not crazy about that. I know that you had to discuss an extension with him just based on when he was drafted. And it's not like this is an egregious overpay or anything. I would have liked something in the $65 million range. So we're talking just a $7 million difference in the grand scheme of things. That's really not a lot. And like I said, Allen's young. You want to lock him up long term. So I don't mind this move for Washington. It makes sense. I can get behind it. It's a little bit of an overpay, but I do think Allen's going to put in another really good season. And think about this defensive line for Washington. Chase Young, Allen, Montez Sweat, and Daron Payne. That may be the best defensive line in the NFL. Maybe. I would really need to think about it. I'll say this, though. It does have an argument for it. There's no question about that. Alright, now I'll give you some NBA Valk talk. And there was a mammoth trade yesterday. The Grizzlies traded Jonas Valanciunas, the 17th and 51st overall picks, to the Pelicans for Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, the 10th and 40th overall picks, and the Lakers' first rounder in not this coming NBA draft, but the draft after. The Pelicans did add a top 10 protection to that pick. Look, there was talk of the Pelicans needing to attach significant assets to Adams and/or Bledsoe if they wanted to get rid of them. I had talked about the possibility of an Adams and/or Bledsoe trade in the past. It doesn't surprise me that they were traded. What surprises me is that the Pelicans got the best player in this deal. Jonas Valanciunas is 1,000,000 times better than Steven Adams, and he's a lot better than Eric Bledsoe. Valanciunas put up 17.1 points per game last year. 12.5 rebounds per game last year. Yes, he's not the defender that Adams is, but he's the much better offensive player. And he can stretch the floor a little bit. That's important for Zion. He needs spacing to be at his best. So just to be clear, the Pelicans got rid of two guys that they wanted to get rid of. It was clear that they weren't going to work out in New Orleans. They moved down 7 spots in the first round, 11 spots in the second round, and give up the lowest of their first rounders in not this coming NBA draft, but the draft after. This is a fantastic move for the Pelicans. It makes sense for the Grizzlies too. They move into the lottery, they can add another premier young talent to their really good young core. They get a defensive stopper in Adams. And they get a player in Bledsoe who will give them some good veteran presence. He'll be the backup point guard. The reality is this trade makes sense for both sides, but I feel like it's better for the Pelicans. Nothing against what the Grizzlies did here, okay? I know why they did it. Their logic is sound, but this trade is just better for the Pelicans. They got rid of 2 bad contracts, ended up with the best player in the deal, and all they did was move down 7 picks in the first round, 11 picks in the second round, and they gave up the lowest of the 2 first rounders that they had in 2022. There's no question that the Lakers will make the playoffs next year, and they'll be better than the Pelicans. This also gives the Pelicans a lot of flexibility in free agency. They can now add Kyle Lowry if that's what they want to do. I think I'd rather they keep Lonzo, but I understand the logic behind adding Lowry. Lowry's better than Lonzo. It's just that simple. The Pelicans kind of need to hit the fast forward button a little bit. It's not that Lonzo's a bad player. He's not. I like him. But the Pelicans need to prove that they can make the playoffs with Zion sooner rather than later. Kyle Lowry gives them a better chance to do that than Lonzo Ball does. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Valk talk. And there was a pipe dream that some Islanders fans had. Alex Ovechkin experienced his greatest success with Barry Trotz. Ovi's a free agent. The Islanders opened up a spot on the top line by letting Jordan Eberle be exposed in the expansion draft. The Kraken ended up taking him. There were some Islanders fans who thought that Ovechkin could go to the Islanders. It's not going to happen. Ovechkin just signed a 5-year extension with the Capitals worth $47.5 million. That's $9.5 million per year. It's obviously a great move for the Capitals. You don't need me to say that. Ovechkin has shown no signs of slowing down. Yes, he's up there in age. He's going to be 36 when the season starts, but Ovechkin's still a point-a-game talent. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's the best player in Capitals history. You've got to keep him in DC for his whole career. It's just that simple. You made the mistake in letting Barry Trotz walk. He couldn't make another mistake by letting his best player walk also. And don't kid yourself. If Ovechkin had hit free agency, it wouldn't have stunned me to see him with the Islanders. I mean, I'll say this, the Islanders have a better chance of winning the Cup next year than the Capitals do. But Ovechkin has already won his Cup. That's not what motivates him. I think what motivates him is loyalty to the franchise that drafted him. So this is obviously a great move by the Capitals. You don't need me to say that. They let one future Hall of Famer go to the Islanders. They couldn't let another one join them. Moving on now to the Panthers, dumping Anton Stralman off on the Coyotes. The Coyotes took on Andrew Ladd's contract from the Islanders. They're taking on Stralman's contract from the Panthers as well. The full trade is Stralman, Vladislav Kolyachonok, I'm sure I butchered that name, and a second rounder in 2024 to the Coyotes. In exchange, the Panthers are just getting a seventh rounder in 2023. The Panthers just wanted to get rid of Stralman's contract. It's just that simple. He's set to make $5.5 million this year. It's not like the Panthers were in cap hell or anything. Before this move, they had just over $7 million in cap room. But they do need to re-sign Sam Reinhart. You want to give yourself as much flexibility as possible to add pieces at the trade deadline and to call guys up if you need to. So I understand why the Panthers wanted to get rid of Stralman. I do like Stralman, though. I always liked him. Plays a really good two-way game. Really good defensively, good offensively. Put up 9 points in 38 games last year. That's not bad for a defenseman. I can live with that. It's not the 30-point seasons that we've seen Stralman have in the past, but he's not getting any younger. He's going to turn 35 in 5 days. This move makes perfect sense for the Coyotes. And the Panthers did good to get out from under Stralman's contract. Good job by both teams. Speaking of the Coyotes, they lured a pretty darn good Russian over from the KHL. Dmitry Yashkin is back in the NHL. The Coyotes signed him to a 1-year deal worth $3.2 million. And I like this move. I have no complaints about this at all. Yashkin was fantastic in the KHL. I understand that it's the KHL. You have to take the numbers with a little bit of a grain of salt. But Yashkin was a point-a-game player the last 2 seasons for the Moscow Dynamo. That does mean something. Also, I'll say this. Yashkin wasn't a bad NHLer. He was a decent third liner. Not great, not terrible. His last NHL action was in the 18-19 season. He put up 8 points in 37 games for the Capitals. That's not impressive, but given what Yashkin did for the Dynamo, yeah, he can be a good third liner for the Coyotes. I mean, there are 2 things that you gotta think about here. No NHLer is gonna want to sign with the Coyotes because no one expects them to be good. So yeah, they probably have to look internationally if they want to add an impact free agent. It doesn't get much more impactful than Yashkin. Also, the Coyotes can just flip Yashkin at the trade deadline. If Yashkin is finally able to put it all together in the NHL, yeah, the Coyotes could get something for him. If he doesn't, no harm done. You can just let him go back to Russia at the end of the contract. This actually makes perfect sense for the Coyotes. Moving on now to the Jets, re-signing Paul Stastny to a one-year deal worth $3.75 million. And this is a really good move for the Jets. Stastny put together a really good season for him last year, put up 29 points in 56 games. He's just an all-around good player. Has been underrated for a long time. Now he seems to be settling into more of a second-line role as opposed to being the first liner that he once was. But that's what happens at the age of 35. You're going to move down the depth chart a little bit. Great move by the Jets. It makes a ton of sense. Good job by Stastny in getting a very fair contract. This move makes perfect sense for both sides. Speaking of the Jets, they traded 2 second-rounders, one in 2022 and one in 2023, to the Capitals for Brendan Dillon. Dillon's like the prototypical defenseman. Not going to give you much offensively by himself, but he's very good at setting up his teammates. Very sound defensively. Not afraid to get physical. Every team could use a guy like Dillon. Just a very, very underrated player. And the Jets have needed blue line help for a while now. Besides Neil Pionk and Josh Morrissey, who scares you? Derek Forbort's a free agent. Dylan DeMello's nothing special. Logan Stanley and Ville Heinola have potential, but God only knows if they're going to reach it. Adding Dillon makes that blue line a lot better. 2 seconds, maybe a little bit of an overpay. I would have preferred to see only 1 second. But the Jets needed to add a defenseman. They added a really good one. I can't get on him too much for this. This trade makes sense for both teams. Moving on now to the spinning of the goalie carousel. Braden Holtby got bought out by the Canucks. Martin Jones got bought out by the Sharks. And the Golden Knights gave Marc-Andre Fleury away to the Blackhawks. Let's start with Holtby. The reality is, he's at the end of the line. I thought he would turn it around with the Canucks because he had a bad last year with the Capitals, had an under 900 save percentage, and over 3.1 goals against. I did think Travis Green could help him out. Oh, was I wrong? Holtby was even worse for the Canucks. Had an 889 save percentage, a 3.67 goals against. He was one of the worst goalies in the NHL. The reality is, Holtby's done. He should retire. He's just not good anymore. Good job by the Canucks in buying him out. I don't think Holtby wants to retire, but He just doesn't have what it takes to be a good NHL goalie anymore. Martin Jones has really struggled the past few seasons. The last 3 years, he hasn't had a save percentage over 900. He hasn't had a GAA under 2.9. He's another guy who it's clear that he just doesn't have what it takes to be successful anymore. It was a good run. Give Jones credit. He won a Stanley Cup as Jonathan Quick's backup in 2014. And in 2016, he was outstanding for the Sharks as they almost won the Cup. But he just doesn't have it anymore. I'll say this, though. The Sharks are going to be paying Jones for a while. The next 6 seasons. And he won't be doing anything for him. I understand why you'd want to move on from Jones. Okay, there's no question. But to see these buyout penalties in print, it does make you think. Just to give you a sense of what those numbers are, the cheapest one is $1,666,667. The Sharks are going to have at least that against their books for the next 6 seasons. That's tough. But again, the Sharks did need to buy out Jones. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in net, though. They traded for Aiden Hill, but I don't see him as being the long-term starter for the Sharks. He can be a good backup, there's no question, but I'd expect the Sharks to be aggressive in adding another goalie. As for the Golden Knights giving away Marc-Andre Fleury, that's what this is. The Blackhawks are taking on the rest of Fleury's contract. All the Golden Knights got back was some schmagegi named Mikhail Hakkarainen. This is a tough way to go out if you're Fleury. For the first 4 years of the Golden Knights' existence, Fleury was really the face of that team. Led them to 3 Stanley Cup semifinals appearances. Obviously led them to the Cup finals his first year with the team. Now you're going to give him away to the Blackhawks? I mean, that's rough. I'll say this. I understand the logic. You gotta realize, the Golden Knights have Robin Lehner signed long-term. He's due $20 million over the next 4 years. You don't want to pay 2 goalies. Lehner signed that extension with the expectation that he would be the Golden Knights starter at some point. Actually, I thought he'd be the starter last year, but Fleury was sensational. I mean, here's what really surprises me about this. There was no team in the NHL that needed a goalie that would be willing to trade for Fleury. The Hurricanes would have made perfect sense for him. I mean, Fleury doesn't want to be a Blackhawk. There are now rumors that he could retire. I don't blame him for not wanting to be a Blackhawk. This is just bizarre. I don't like the Golden Knights giving him away. It's not the right way to treat him. But if you didn't have any choice in the matter, I understand it. If you want to move forward with Lehner, I totally get that. I just think it's a bad job by the other goalie-needy teams in the league to not want to part with a significant asset to get Fleury. Fleury's still a great player. Future Hall of Famer, had an under 2 goals against this year, .928 save percentage. He won the freaking Vezina Trophy. Okay, he's showing no signs of slowing down, and this is how his career could end. That leaves a really bad taste in my mouth. Moving on now to the Oilers buying out James Neal. They'll now owe him $1,916,667 for the next 4 seasons. And yeah, the Oilers had to make some cap room. They've got to re-sign some big pieces, and Neal was overpaid. There's no question about that. The guy was due to make $5,750,000 for the next 2 years. He's not worth that. Once upon a time he was. Not anymore. Neal was brought in with the expectation that playing with McDavid and Draisaitl would rejuvenate him. It didn't work. He was a bad Oiler. The reality is, he's past his prime. It's a shame, because he was once a really, really, really good player. But he just doesn't have it anymore. I don't mind the Oilers moving on from him. It's going to be tough to have this contract on the books for the next 4 years, but you got to do what you got to do. Alright, now I'll give you some MLB Valk talk. And for a long time, I've said that I don't want the Yankees to make any win-now moves. Don't trade prospects during this lost season. Brian Cashman actually listened to me. He did make a move to help his team now, but he didn't give up anything significant. He traded Diego Castillo and Hoy-Jun Park to the Pirates for Clay Holmes. First, let's make this clear. These guys aren't blue chip prospects. You can look at their minor league numbers all you want and say, hey, these guys would produce in the majors. You have no idea if that's true or not. I saw people upset that the Yankees traded Castillo. Like, really upset. Castillo's never played above Double-A. He's hitting .277. with 11 homers and 32 RBIs. I mean, that's impressive, don't get me wrong. But you can't read anything into Double-A stats. How's he going to do in Triple-A? How's he going to do in the majors? I'll say this, I don't think that his power increase is sustainable. He's never shown this type of power before. You don't know anything about Diego Castillo. Come on, you're just being lazy. You're looking at his Double-A stats. Like, if the Yankees were to release Castillo, no one would care. The only reason people care is because he was traded. Park is a little tougher to justify, because I do like Park. I did think that he could contribute in the majors. He had developed his contact swing a lot, had a really good eye, developed some power. I was a lot more impressed with Park than I was Castillo. There's no question about that. I mean, just to be clear, Park did get into a game for the Yankees. A couple Fridays ago, he pinch hit for Tim LeCastro. The Yankees were down 3-0. Runners on the corners. Maybe, just maybe, the Yankees can get some momentum against the Red Sox. The first pitch that Tanner Houck threw, he grounded out to Bobby Dahlbeck. Dahlbeck was playing first that night. That was it. That was literally the only pitch that Park faced in the majors as a member of the Yankees. It was not good. Okay, in all fairness, he should not have swung at that pitch. That was a terrible decision. I get that his nerves got the better of him. But still, you've got to know better than that. Take a pitch. I mean, I can say this with a high degree of confidence. That moment didn't endear Park to Yankees management. That just demonstrates a lack of baseball IQ that someone at the age of 25 should have. Would I have given up on Park because of that? No. I like Park's positional versatility. I like his speed. I think Park can contribute in the majors. Maybe he'll never be great, but worst case scenario for him, he's a bench piece. I think he has a very high floor. The question that needs to be answered is it worth it to give up Hoy-Jun Park for Clay Holmes? Forget Diego Castillo. No one knows anything about him. Okay, you don't need to worry about him. I promise you. I think one thing we've learned from the Mike Tauchman trade is that these quadruple A players, if I can call Park a quadruple A player, I think that's how the Yankees saw him, will only get middle relievers. Mike Tauchman got Wandy Peralta. No one's going to be mistaking Wandy Peralta for Mariano Rivera anytime soon. Same thing with Clay Holmes. I mean, Holmes isn't a terrible pitcher. He's 3-2 with a 4.93 ERA. Darren O'Day being out for the season opened up a hole in the Yankees bullpen. You want to fill it with Holmes? I'm okay with that. I don't want to kill Clay Holmes. I think he can turn into something halfway decent. But to answer the question that I just posed, not really. I don't want to kill this too much. I don't want to hype up Hoy-Jun Park like he's the second coming of Derek Jeter, because he's not. Realistically, I think he's just going to turn into a pinch runner / utility player. I don't want to kill Brian Cashman for trading a guy like that. It's okay to trade guys like that if you can get a player that you think can help you more going forward. Is Clay Holmes that guy, though? Probably not. He certainly hasn't set the world on fire with the Pirates. Walks a lot of hitters. He has 25 walks through 42 innings. That's not good. But I think it's possible that Holmes could turn into a decent middle reliever. I don't hate this trade for the Yankees. I don't love it. It's not what I would have done. I would have liked to have seen Park get more of a chance with the Yankees. I'll say that the Pirates won the trade, but it's not a terrible trade for the Yankees. It could have been a lot worse. It could have been a Trevor Story trade. That makes no sense for the Yankees. You want to bring in Story, do it in free agency. Don't do it now. I'll close this show out by talking about the Andrew Chafin trade. The Cubs traded him to the Athletics for Greg Deichmann or Deichmann. I've only seen it written. And Daniel Palencia. I didn't know that it was possible for the Athletics bullpen to get better. Lou Trevino, Yusmeiro Petit, Jake Diekman, Sergio Romo, Deolis Guerra, and JB Wendelken? How can you improve that? Well, I'll tell you, by trading for Andrew Chafin. Chafin is a really, really good lefty reliever. He has a 2.06 ERA this year for the Cubs. That was the one hole in the Athletics bullpen. They really only had one lefty. That, of course, being Diekman. They tried Jesus Luzardo, that didn't work. They tried Raymond Goudouin, that didn't work. They have Sam Mole, but how much can you really trust him? They tried Adam Kolarek, that didn't work. Andrew Chafin solidifies that hole. That Athletics bullpen now is lethal. If they have a one-run lead in the 5th or 6th inning, good luck coming back from that. That does make the Athletics a scary team going forward. It's kind of funny. The Yankees are chasing the Athletics. The Yankees traded for Clay Holmes. The Athletics traded for Andrew Chafin. Edge Athletics. You don't need to know anything about Daniel Palencia, so let me just tell you a little bit about Greg. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name again. The biggest issue with him is health. He's been plagued by injuries all throughout his career. He's never played more than 80 games in a season. It's possible that this guy is just made of glass. He profiles as a Rob Deere type. If he can stay healthy, ton of power, not going to hit for a high average. He's going to strike out a lot. He's actually a perfect fit for the modern game. Realize, baseball doesn't care about strikeouts anymore. They just want you to hit home runs. They just want high launch angles. That's it. So Greg actually fits that pretty well. But I will say this, I'm skeptical of his major league future. It's just hard for me to get behind a guy who's going to strike out a lot and not hit for a high average. I don't care if he hits 20 home runs. All in all, the Athletics won this trade. I know why the Cubs did it. It makes sense. But I don't think that Greg is going to have a long and prosperous MLB career. I just don't think he has what it takes. Edge Athletics, their bullpen is just incredibly scary. Can't say it enough. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk. And if you disagree with me, you're wrong.